Congressman Khanna of California. He serves on a number of committees and is the deputy whip for the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Congressman, thank you very much this morning. I'm sure you're a little tired like everybody else is after last night. But, you know, let me ask you this. A lot of folks in your party wanted to see the president get fiery last night. Is that what you got?
It was a brilliant speech. It was a passionate speech. I'm actually more energized, as is the House Democratic Caucus. I mean, look, the president delivered, but the best part actually was not when he was most fiery. It was at the end, where he said, it's not about age, it's about values. I was called the youngest guy. I've been called someone who is old. But you know what? I've always stood for compassion, for dignity, for decency, and that's American values, and that's what I'm going to fight for America's future. And I thought he connected in a very deep way.
I do want to ask you about immigration, because that really flared up as a big issue last night. There was this moment when the president was sort of rattling off the number of agents that would go down to the border as a result of the bipartisan immigration legislation that had been making its way through Congress until it was blocked by Republicans. And there was this moment where you saw James Lankford, the senator from Oklahoma. You might not have seen this because you were on the House floor. Perhaps you've seen the video since, where he mouths the word true, agreeing with the president at that moment. I just have to ask you, if we have some of the video, we can show it to our viewers. I just have to ask you, Congressman, after this speech last night, is there any more of an appetite on the Republican side to get that bill through the Congress?
Well, I appreciate Senator Lankford acknowledging that. What he was saying is that the president was right, that the president was willing to compromise, that the president had a real plan for border security that had support for Republicans, and that Donald Trump, for political reasons, sabotaged it because he wants to run on the issue. My hope is that people will see the response the president got, that he is in the business of having solutions, of fixing things, and that it'll move my colleagues. But unfortunately, the Republicans have really been focused on tearing this president down and helping Donald Trump, not solving issues.
And the president also confronted the conservative justices on the Supreme Court who overturned Roe versus Wade. Let's listen to that.
It's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following, and with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. You're about to realize just how much you are about that.
Just curious, what did you make of that moment? How did you feel about the president almost going after the Supreme Court, or the conservative justices on the Supreme Court? And how critical is this issue going to be in the fall?
Well, he did it with humor and decency, but he showed in a few lines just how out of touch the Supreme Court justices in their black robes who have been on the court for decades are with modern American life. I mean, for them not to understand that women have the right to an abortion and that elected officials and politicians shouldn't be coming in the way of them and their doctors, and that their decision actually has led to things like banning IVF in Alabama, they're just out of touch. And I think that's what the president was highlighting.
And how do you think the president handled the Israel-Hamas war in his address last night? And should he have more forcefully called for a ceasefire? Should he be demanding a ceasefire right now?
Well, look, I've been outspoken that the president should call for a permanent ceasefire and release of all hostages, and that we should stop transferring weapons to Israel that are being used to kill civilians while we don't have aid getting to people. But I thought the president last night spoke with such empathy about the suffering in Gaza. It's the most empathy I've heard from him. He acknowledged that over 30,000 people have been killed. He acknowledged the 2 million who've been displaced. He acknowledged that we need to do a much better job getting aid in. And he said to Israel, don't block the aid. So I appreciate where the president has come on the issue.
Do you think that's going to remain a political vulnerability for the president if he does not demand that permanent ceasefire that you just talked about a few moments ago?
Well, first, Jim, it's a substantive issue. I mean, people are being killed there. I know people in my district who have had generations of family members killed. I mean, it's such a horrific, heartbreaking issue. So I really, really hope that they will do everything possible to get for a ceasefire, at least through Ramadan. But I do think that this remains an issue for many young voters, progressive voters, young Jewish voters, Muslim American, Arab American voters, voters of color, and that the president really has to try to get this war to end. I've said that directly to him and his team, and I'm glad that he at least used the word ceasefire in the speech, and I think they've come a long way on the issue.
And I have to ask you, I don't want to throw too much of a curveball at the control room, but, you know, some of the antics that we saw last night on the House floor, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene wearing the MAGA hat. There was another congressman wearing a T-shirt with Trump's mugshot on it that said "Never Surrender." What is going on during these State of the Union speeches? I mean, the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, called on his members to not do this sort of stuff. Is it just totally out of control? Now you're on the House floor. You're witnessing all of this in real time. What's going on?
Well, it's sad that we can't have some civility and decorum, that people are hurling insults at the President of the United States from the House floor. Look, I sat through 4 State of the Unions that Donald Trump delivered. I never yelled insults at him. I never acted up, neither did anyone in the House Democratic Caucus. And we had impeached him twice, but we still gave him the courtesy because he was the President of the United States, elected by the American people. And I just wish that, regardless of party, we could do that. But I don't think that's going to reflect well on them. I think the American people expect in those situations that we rally around the president. That's not rallying around a Democrat. It's not rallying around Joe Biden. It's saying he is the leader of our country and we owe a respect to the office of the presidency.
All right, Congressman Khanna of California, thank you very much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
All right.